It was once a taboo topic that is now very much in your face and everywhere you look if you're a sports fan. From the days of shady characters taking action in back rooms or traveling to Vegas or Atlantic City, to now where there's an app for that, sports wagering has gone from smoky casinos to becoming a massive multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. This episode of More Than Just a Score takes a look at the evolution of sports betting and where the industry could be going in the coming years. Now, it's a sensitive subject with several complex issues for our society to grapple with. For most, a small wager can enhance the excitement of the game. For others, though, it presents real issues surrounding mental health and addiction. We always ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, but for this episode, we also encourage you to speak with a mental health professional if gambling has become more than just a fun way to enjoy the game. For more than a century, sports betting in North America existed in two worlds at once. One world was pretty public and generally accepted, a trip to the track or a boys' weekend in Vegas. There are office pools and fantasy football leagues, and who hasn't filled out a March Madness bracket before? I know I have. But the other world was more out of sight. It would be the neighborhood bookmaker or the illegal wire room, offshore accounts, and debts settled away from the box score. What changed in the last decade, though, wasn't the urge to bet. That's always been there. What's changed is the way in which we place our bets and just how easy it is to make a wager. The old way to make a bet meant a person had to find a bookie or visit a racetrack. The new way just needs an app on a phone and a few seconds of attention. Sportsbooks are no longer at the edge of the casino floor. They're right at our fingertips. Ads seem to be everywhere on broadcasts. Odds are embedded segments in pregame shows, experts suggesting parlays before the national anthem has even ended. The transformation has created one of the fastest growing businesses in North American sports. It has forced leagues, governments, and families to also confront some uncomfortable questions. The story of sports wagering begins long before smartphones. North American sports betting grew first through horse racing, where wagering was woven into the experience. Racetracks made betting respectable in a way that other gambling rarely was. The betting window gave the practice some rules and a public setting, but outside the track, sports betting remained mostly informal or illegal. Baseball, boxing, and football found ways to attract wagers. Bookmakers found ways to get in on the action, but the business very much lived in the margins. The 1919 Black Sox scandal gave American sport its founding nightmare. The thought that players could be bought off to influence results created a crisis for sporting organizations. From that point forward, the integrity of competition became the permanent shadow beside every discussion of sports wagering. Las Vegas changed the image, but not all the anxieties. Nevada legalized casino gambling in 1931, and over time, Sin City became the one place in America where a sports bettor could legally walk into a room, look at a board, and wager openly. For decades, the Las Vegas sportsbook was less glamorous than the casino table, but it had a particular electricity. The room was filled with smoke, point spreads were posted, and people who believed they knew something the house didn't took their chances. The Stardust became legendary because its lines moved markets. Odds makers weren't just clerks, they were interpreters of injuries, weather, and trends. By the late 20th century, Las Vegas had made sports betting feel like both a subculture and a science. Yet even as Vegas grew, most of the continent remained locked out of the legal single-game betting business. In the United States, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, passed in 1992, effectively froze the legal landscape, leaving Nevada as the clear exception.
State-authorized sports gambling threatens to change the nature of sporting events from wholesome entertainment for all ages to devices for gambling. It threatens to undermine public confidence in the integrity of professional and amateur sports. Furthermore, state-sanctioned sports gambling will promote gambling among our nation's young people. Teenage gambling related problems are increasing throughout this nation. The approximately 8 million compulsive gamblers in America today, 1 million of them are under the age of 20.
In Canada, provincial lottery products allowed parlay-style sports wagers, But the ordinary fan who wanted to legally bet one team to win one game generally couldn't do so. That restriction shaped betting culture. If a fan wanted to make a single event bet, they had to do so illegally or through an offshore market. Debate continued to rage for decades, though, with the dam in the United States finally breaking in 2018 when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down PASPA. That opened the door for states to authorize sports betting. They all of a sudden saw a new potential stream for tax revenue. Casinos envisioned new customers. For media companies, there was now an opportunity for new content and a means of monetizing that content. The sports leagues that had treated betting as a threat and had opposed the repeal of PASPA now shifted course and started signing data and sponsorship deals. Daily fantasy operators such as DraftKings and FanDuel, already skilled at customer acquisition and sports data marketing, moved quickly into sportsbook apps. What followed was a gradual spread of a new product, and it was a gold rush. Canada's shift came 3 years later when Parliament passed legislation allowing single-event sports betting. Provinces could now offer legal single-game wagering instead of forcing bettors into parlays. Ontario became the most important experiment. In April 2022, it launched a regulated, competitive iGaming market with private operators, creating something closer to the American model than the traditional provincial lottery approach. The growth was immediate. By the end of the 2024-25 fiscal year, iGaming Ontario reported more than $82.7 billion in total online wagers across all iGaming products, $2.9 billion in total gaming revenue, and more than 2.6 million active player accounts. Sports betting itself accounted for $11.4 billion in wagers and $724 million in gaming revenue during that fiscal year. In a province of roughly 15 million people, those numbers showed how quickly betting had moved from the margins into everyday digital life. The United States grew even larger. The American Gaming Association reported that state-regulated sportsbooks handled $166.94 billion in wagers in 2025. That generated $16.96 billion in sports betting revenue and $3.7 billion in state taxes. That's not just a betting story, it's a big sports business story. In less than a decade, legal sports wagering had become a major part of the financial ecosystem surrounding sports leagues, broadcasters, and digital media. A Siena College Research Institute and St. Bonaventure poll released in 2025 found that 22% of Americans and 48% of men aged 18 to 49 had an account with at least one online sportsbook. That's the most coveted demographic in sports, and it wasn't just watching games, it was also getting in on the action. The leading companies built their empires through speed, brand recognition, and relentless presence. FanDuel and DraftKings became the dominant names in the American online sportsbook market, with BetMGM, Caesars, and others chasing for their share. The rise reflected a deeper change in how betting products were designed. The old sportsbook was built around point spreads, the money line, and points totals. The new sportsbook is built around engagement. It wants the customer to stay in the app before, during, and after the game. That's where same-game parlays became the industry's signature move. A traditional parlay combines multiple bets, all of which must win. A same-game parlay lets a bettor combine outcomes from one game. A team to win, a star player to score, a quarterback to pass for a certain number of yards, and so on. The appeal is obvious. It turns one game into several games within a game. A fan can build a bet that mirrors the way they envision the night unfolding. The danger is just as clear, though. Parlays are harder to win. They generally carry higher margins for operators and encourage bettors to chase bigger payouts through more complicated combinations, and therein lies the danger. Live betting pushed the same logic even further. Instead of betting only before kickoff, fans can now bet after every drive, pitch, serve, or shift. The odds move constantly. A basketball team falls behind by 10 and a new price appears. A pitcher loses his command and the totals change. Live betting makes sports feel more interactive, but it also compresses decision time. The slower rituals of an old bet, looking at trends, thinking it over, and calculating risk versus reward, have been replaced by instant prompts. The psychological friction disappears, and an informed hunch becomes an emotional decision that further tilts the game in favor of the operators. The next frontier is microbetting, the wagering of tiny moments, the result of the next pitch, the next play, the next point. In theory, microbetting is a triumph of data and technology. It requires live feeds, rapid odds making, and sophisticated risk controls in real time. In practice, though, it raises the deepest public health and integrity questions, because it turns a game into hundreds of possible gambling events. A fan no longer needs to care who wins. They can care whether the next pitch is a ball. In essence, it becomes nothing more than inserting a coin into a slot machine and pulling the lever. That's a radical shift in the relationship between sport and spectator. The public health concerns have grown louder because the product has changed. North America isn't simply legalizing the sportsbook window that once only existed in Las Vegas. It is legalizing a high-frequency, mobile, personalized, and private gambling environment. Problem gambling advocates worry that young adults who are comfortable with apps, payments, gaming mechanics, and social media-style prompts, they worry about advertising saturation during games watched by families, and that sports, once a setting for the occasional wager, is becoming a constant trigger point for people struggling with addiction. Public health advocates have increasingly compared the industry's growth to other addictive consumer products, arguing that treatment, funding, and consumer protections haven't kept pace in this brave new world of legalization. Canada's debate has been especially visible because sports betting advertising seemed to arrive in a deluge all at once. After Ontario opened its market, betting ads flooded broadcasts, podcasts, arena signage, and social media. Former athletes and celebrities appeared in commercials, making sportsbooks feel safe and mainstream. The Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario responded by moving to ban the use of active or retired athletes in most iGaming advertising and to restrict celebrities and influencers likely to appeal to minors. Those rules took effect in February of 2024. The message was clear. A legal market could exist, but not every marketing tactic would be accepted. At the federal level, Canadian lawmakers also examined the issue. Bill S-269, the National Framework on Advertising for Sports Betting Act, passed the Senate in November of 2024 before dying with the end of the parliamentary session in January of 2025. Its purpose wasn't to ban sports betting, but to create a national framework for advertising, research, and harm prevention. A similar effort, Bill S-211, later moved through the Senate in 2025. The bill reflects a growing belief that gambling advertising shouldn't be left entirely to provincial rules and market incentives when sports broadcasts cross provincial borders and national networks sell the ads. The argument for national standards has only grown stronger. The U.S. is facing the same concerns, but through a more fragmented system. Since each state regulates sports betting differently, rules on advertising, types of bets, responsible gaming tools, and operator conduct vary widely. That patchwork has prompted calls for more federal guardrails. The Safe Bet Act, introduced by Congressman Paul Tonko and Senator Richard Blumenthal in March 2025, proposed minimum national standards in marketing, affordability, and the use of artificial intelligence. Its supporters argue that the product has become too fast, targeted, and addictive to be governed only by state-by-state revenue models. The bill, of course, faces political and industry resistance, but its existence shows how the conversation is changing. The first wave after 2018 asked which states would legalize. The next wave asks what legalization should look like. Affordability checks are among the most contentious ideas. Supporters say operators should have some responsibility to identify when a customer's betting habits appear to be financially dangerous, especially when companies have detailed data about deposits, losses, and frequency of use. Though on the other side, critics warn that affordability checks could be intrusive, push bettors back into illegal markets, or more importantly, create privacy concerns. The debate rages as to the nature of the sportsbook customer relationship. Is a book merely a platform for providing entertainment, or is it exploiting data to create a harmful entertainment environment? The answer to those questions will shape regulation in years to come. Integrity concerns have risen alongside mental health concerns. Sports leagues once feared that legalization would make scandals more likely. Supporters of legalizations countered that regulated markets make suspicious activity easier to detect because legal operators can flag unusual bets and share information. Both arguments contain elements of truth. Legal markets have created visibility, but they also make it easier for individual athletes to manipulate games on a more granular level. The Jontay Porter case became the clearest warning. Porter was a two-way player with the Toronto Raptors, but was banned for life by the NBA in April 2024 after the league found that he had disclosed confidential health information to sports bettors. He also limited his own participation in at least one game for betting purposes and bet on NBA games.
Porter, the three, it's good. That's a Raptors' ninth made three for Jontay Porter.
The case centered on the player prop markets that included unders on Porter's own stats. This all happened inside the modern, regulated, and data-rich betting era. The NBA's lifetime ban was meant as more than just a punishment for a player who ran afoul of the rules and spirit of fair play. It was also a clear message that even the smallest bit of manipulation threatens the credibility of the entire league. The Ippei Mizuhara scandal put another vulnerability on display. Mizuhara, who was Shohei Ohtani's longtime interpreter, pleaded guilty in 2024 to bank fraud and filing a false tax return after prosecutors said he stole nearly $17 million from Ohtani to cover gambling debts. In February 2025, he was sentenced to nearly 5 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution. Ohtani was treated by authorities as a victim, not a participant, but still the scandal shook baseball because it unfolded around the sport's biggest star and showed how highly paid athletes can become easy targets for bad actors. Even when the game itself isn't fixed, the perception of proximity can damage trust. College sports may be even more vulnerable. The athletes are younger, less wealthy, and often surrounded by classmates who can access them directly. The NCAA has reported continuing betting violations, and in 2025 said enforcement staff was pursuing cases involving 13 former men's basketball players from 6 different universities.
Michigan and Arizona playing a game to earn the right to play another game. This is the Final Four.
Allegations have included betting on and against players' own teams, sharing information with third parties, manipulating scoring or game outcomes, and refusing to cooperate with investigations. NCAA research has shown that many student athletes hold permissive views about sports wagering, with significant numbers believing that betting is acceptable if it's not on their own sport. Athlete harassment is another byproduct. When a fan loses a prop bet because a player misses a free throw, drops a pass, or suffers an injury, frustration can turn personal within seconds. Social media gives angry bettors a megaphone to spew vitriol or question the integrity of those involved. Professional and college athletes have described abuse tied to gambling losses, and the problem is worse for athletes who aren't millionaires and don't have large security teams. Prop betting makes the individual athlete the betting object, and it changes the emotional pressure placed on players. The industry's defenders argue that legal betting is safer than illegal betting, and they're right in a lot of key ways. Legal markets can verify age, provide self-exclusion tools, and monitor any suspicious activity. They also pay taxes and cooperate with leagues. Ontario's regulated system, for example, was designed partly to draw players away from unregulated offshore sites. American states have created licensing systems and tax structures that didn't exist when the market was underground. Integrity monitoring companies track odds movement and betting patterns across jurisdictions. A suspicious wager is much more likely to be flagged in a legal market than in a hidden one. But regulation doesn't necessarily equate to safety. The central tension of modern sports betting is that the same technology that can detect harm can also deepen it. AI can spot risky behavior, but it can also exploit it. Data that helps operators spot unusual bets can also help them target customers more effectively. The future will depend on which side of the technology regulators choose to encourage. In the years ahead, the industry is likely to keep moving in three directions: faster betting, deeper personalization, and broader integration. Microbetting will grow as data feeds improve. Same-game parlays will remain central to the business, though, because they're popular with customers and profitable for operators. AI will have a larger role in shaping pricing, marketing, fraud detection, and responsible gaming systems. Prediction markets will also blur the line between financial trading and sports wagering, creating new fights over whether products are gambling, derivatives, or something in between. More states may legalize, but the easy expansion period is slowing as the largest markets mature and political resistance grows. Canada's path may become more cautious. Ontario has shown that a regulated open market generates major activity, but it's also shown how quickly advertising can provoke backlash. Other provinces, including Alberta, have studied or moved toward more competitive models, but they will do so with Ontario's lessons in front of them. The question can't simply be how much revenue can be generated. It'll be how to build markets that do not overwhelm broadcasts, normalize gambling for children, or leave problem gamblers behind. The United States may remain divided between state control and federal pressure. Operators prefer clear rules, but often resist restrictions that limit advertising, promotions, or high-margin products. Public health advocates want national standards, funding for treatment, and limits on the most addictive features. The leagues themselves love the revenue and engagement that betting partnerships bring, but they also want to protect trust in their games. The bettors want convenience, privacy, and fair treatment. All of these interests at play don't often align and create real questions for legislators to tackle. So striking a balance matters because the audience for sport isn't just adults. It includes children learning the language of fandom and families who may never place a wager but still have to absorb the culture around the game. When odds appear beside analysis and broadcasts discuss parlays as casually as injuries, the meaning of sitting down to watch the game changes. The line between entertainment and solicitation can become hard to see. There's also a very real economic story to be told here. Sportsbooks don't grow when the fans win. They grow because over time, the math favors the operator. The hold percentage, the margins built into odds, and the difficulty of parlays tilt the playing field. Some customers treat betting as occasional recreation and have no problem staying within limits, but others don't. For regulators, the hard task is to design regulations for the second group without destroying the freedom of the first. For leagues, the task is to accept betting revenue without allowing betting to become an overarching theme of competition. For fans, the task is to remember that while a wager can add drama, it can also quietly take control. History suggests that gambling never stays still. It follows technology, law, and culture. From the racetrack betting windows to the glowing lights of odds boards in the Vegas era, now in the mobile era, it follows the fan everywhere. That mobility is the industry's greatest strength and also its greatest risk. Sports betting in North America has always lived close to the heart of sport because it feeds the same emotions and gut feeling that one moment can change everything. The difference now is simply scale. The wager is no longer whispered in a bar or placed at a Vegas counter. It's measured in billions, delivered by algorithms, advertised during broadcasts, and available at almost every pause in play. The business has become too large to ignore and too embedded to simply roll back. The next chapter will test whether North America can separate legalization from saturation. A regulated market is better than an illegal one. A taxed industry is better than an underground economy. But a legal product can still cause harm, and a profitable product can still threaten the games that made it possible. The The challenge ahead is not to pretend that sports betting will disappear. It's not going to. The challenge is to decide what kind of betting culture will surround the games. One that treats every play as another chance to extract a wager, or one that remembers the game must remain bigger than the line. We hope that you've enjoyed this look into one of the biggest issues facing the world of sports. And again, like and subscribe to the channel, and join us next time when we look for more than just a score.